Hello everyone, this is your friend Sai Yan Paradox Audio Fanfic. What if Raditz escaped death? The Dragon Ball timeline was rewritten. Part 3. The two figures standing on the earth were staring at him, the large one with frustration, the small one with intrigue. He could see that they were powerful, and he noted all his friends disappearing as powers on the earth, so he knew they'd been killing them. The situation would have been much worse if he'd only been seconds longer. One thing that he couldn't believe when he got there was who Nappa had been fighting. Which was why at that moment Raditz hung from his right arm limply. Below, Krillin lay near a formation of rocks, and Gohan was safely on the Nimbus cloud. Hearing a mumble of pain from the body he'd just rescued, Goku's mind was in a rush of thoughts. He'd expected Raditz to be fighting alongside the other Saiyans. Instead, he saw him broken and beaten, being assaulted by the big Saiyan. Did he have a change of heart? But if so, why? My name is Goku, Son Goku responded to Vegeta, who just smirked in response. Well, come on then Kakarot, let's get this started. You low-class worm, Nappa shouted. What a power, Goku thought, in terms of Vegeta. He could sense what was really there, what kind of devastating potential there was. He could sense in the larger fighter a great power as well, but certainly inferior to his own. Slowly, he landed with Raditz, placing his brother, it was strange to think of him in those terms, down. Vegeta for his part watched with fascination. The scouter said 5,000, but he was willing to bet it was higher. These Earthlings had all hidden their true power, several of them hit the 3,000 mark or more when fighting Nappa, but showed only signs of 1,200 1,400 before that. I say you let me kill him now, Nappa urged. Be quiet, Nappa, Vegeta snapped. We've waited all this time for him, we might as well let him get settled in. Vegeta said with a near mocking tone. After all, he wanted to let this fighter have his full chance to die. Despite his power, he was willing to bet Kakarot had the same weak attitude as the others. Goku looked down at Raditz quietly as Gohan floated near him. He'd placed Raditz next to Krillin, who with his own injuries looked even more uncomfortable with Raditz next to him. Everything is going to be fine now, Goku promised Gohan and Krillin. A bloody hand grasped his, looking up at him. Kakarot, Raditz started. Quietly, Goku looked up at him, noting how his brother was smiling. I urge you to kill them, he said, shakily pointing his free hand towards Vegeta and Nappa. As a dying man, I ask this of you, brother. A sick feeling approached Goku after his brother spoke. He never wanted to kill or harm anyone, especially if it could be avoided. The creature that looked at him seemed desperate, but Raditz had no right to ask him to take anyone's lives, especially after all the carnage he'd brought to the earth. He knew all too well about the destroyed cities, the hunt for the Dragon Balls. But he still didn't understand why he was fighting the others. Even after having just saved Raditz from Nappa, he still somehow expected to see his brother over with the other two Saiyans. To Raditz, it was a matter of honor asking Kakarot to kill Nappa and Vegeta in his stead. He had been unable to kill his enemies, it fell to his brother to do so in his absence. Kakarot and he obviously were not close, he'd even helped in Kakarot's demise, but he had no choice but to ask this of his brother, he was the only one left who could make this happen. Kakarot's power was great, a hidden well of energy so great that perhaps he could even defeat Vegeta. I can't do anything you ask, not while I don't know why you fought against your former allies. Goku explained. It wasn't a totally dishonest statement. He'd have fought them regardless, but he had no intention of killing anyone. But, perhaps this would reveal to him why he'd saved his son, hell, maybe why he'd changed sides to begin with. Raditz looked pained to talk further, but did. My failure, he rasped. I failed Prince Vegeta, and he punished me for it. The answer was really in the details he wasn't giving. Krillin shook his head. Don't trust him, Goku. Raditz snarled at the cue-balled human, turning his head towards him. He attacked Nappa, Gohan then said. He nearly got him. He bought us a lot of time for you to get here, Dad. Turning his eyes to Goku for a moment, the brother of Kakarot didn't speak. He couldn't, not about this. Raditz coughed, blood coming up instead of further elaborating. Goku knew Raditz wouldn't spell out why that had driven him to betray his allies, but he could guess. This was revenge for him, not a change of heart. But Goku also believed in second chances. With his betrayal of Vegeta, he was certain that Raditz could find a new path, the same as Piccolo had. I got these from Korin, he said, revealing 2 senzu beans. Krillin smiled as Goku broke one bean in half, handing it to Gohan, and helping it into Krillin's mouth. The two ate their beans. Gohan stood up, immediately, looking completely healed, even his broken shoulder fitting back into place seamlessly. Krillin, who'd been in even worse shape, also got up, stretching. Thanks, Goku. Now you can put a stop to those 2 monsters. Krillin declared. Not yet, Krillin. Goku looked at Raditz, who was staring in disbelief in the miraculous healing of the 2 short warriors. He'd made his decision. Without a senzu bean, he very much doubted Raditz would live. He also believed that the enemy of his enemy was his friend. Finally, however, he believed his brother may have the ability to change. Even Goku could feel the grief and anger behind Raditz. Something had to have really driven him to fight his own allies. It wasn't something that he could answer yet, but he hoped to soon. Before he handed the bean over, however, Goku looked directly at Raditz. I am not going to kill anyone for you, Raditz. You have destroyed thousands of lives on Earth, and countless others elsewhere. But, Goku said, pulling up the bean. Goku, what are you doing? Krillin asked, looking on in shock. Raditz was wondering the same thing. I believe in second chances. Goku finished his sentence, and at the same time answered Krillin. Placing the bean in Raditz's mouth, the eldest Saiyan, still somewhat confused, chewed the bean and swallowed. Broken bones mended, cuts healed, and bruises disappeared. Raditz pulled both his hands up as he felt power surge through him. When he stood up, a sinister grin appeared across his face. Goku even felt his power increase, part of the Saiyan ability to always increase their strength after recovering from serious injuries. Vegeta looked into his scouter and felt uncomfortable. What the hell just happened there? Raditz's power level used to be 3,500, now it was sitting well over 5,800. It was higher than Nappa's. Nappa, Vegeta warned. Both Raditz and Kakarot are now at 5,000 or more. Nappa turned his head, eyebrows knit together in confusion. Goku just looked seriously at Raditz. Don't make me regret this, Raditz, he informed him. Goku turned to walk towards Vegeta when he started to hear Raditz laugh. Nappa, we have unfinished business, you weakling. Excitement rushed through Raditz's veins themselves. He could feel this new power overtaking him and knew full well that he was far superior to Nappa now. A bloodthirsty set of eyes turned towards Nappa, intent on repaying his former, rather large, comrade for his near death just moments ago. I'll rip you limb from limb, Nappa. Goku immediately turned around. No, your business is done. Goku said bluntly. Blinking at the comment, Raditz noted the look in Kakarot's eyes. It was steeled resolve. He wished to avenge his friends. Raditz crossed his arms and felt betrayed himself. His vengeance would have to wait, for now. Very well, Kakarot. The name was said almost with a kind of quiet contempt. Nodding and turning back towards the 2 warriors, Goku began his walk. He stopped about 5 meters from Nappa. You 2 should give up now and leave the earth. I don't want to hurt you. Nappa blinked, before bellowing out a huge laugh. Just like your friends didn't want to hurt me. Language resources. An angry wave washed over Goku as Nappa mocked the dead. Yamcha, Tien, Chiatsu, Piccolo, they were all killed by this monster. He would have to show him the error of his ways. Focusing, pressing his power to bubble to the surface, Goku began to power up gradually. Well, Kakarot, are you going to make me leave or not, you worthless coward? Nappa demanded, finding humor in Goku's reaction, before the ground started to rumble. Slowly, rocks and other small objects started to fly upwards. Looked back to see a puzzled look on Vegeta's face, Nappa became increasingly nervous. Vegeta. Vegeta didn't respond. This low level is about to. No, he just almost doubled Nappa's power level. Finally, Goku unleashed his full strength before them. Vegeta's face said it all for Goku. These bullies had come to Earth and expected this to be easy, and now it wouldn't be. Perhaps after this they'd learn to respect others, because sometimes even the weakest amongst the world could surprise you. Might didn't make right. Nappa, it's over 9,000. Nappa paused when he heard this. What? That can't be right. It's gotta be wrong. Vegeta tore the scouter off furiously. I said it's over 9,000. He shouted, before blasting the scouter into atoms. 9,000. That can't be possible, can it? Nappa shouted, before looking at Goku, veins popping up along his skin as he felt the urge to put the third-class peasant in his place. Gohan, Krillin, and Raditz stood there in awe themselves, especially Raditz. He'd though Kakarot was powerful, but this powerful. You aren't really that strong. Nappa declared, charging Goku with a grin on his face, expecting easy prey. I'll make you pay for all you've done. Goku uttered as the shadow of Nappa's body overtook him. The huge Saiyan was arrogant, everything about his stance was flawed, it all expressed overconfidence. Every flaw was picked out by Goku. Moving under the big frame of Nappa's shoulders, he buried his fist directly in his sternum. Stopping dead in its tracks as pain exploded through his abdomen, Nappa felt an uncontrollable pain. Suddenly there was an equally violent pain in the back of his head. Without even following the movement at all, Goku had appeared behind him, cracking the back of his head a second later with a kick from his boot. With the back of his head and his stomach in agony, Nappa dropped face first into the earth. The first thing to happen was hands went to the back of his head. Nappa's breathing was hindered for a moment, but started to normalize before started to struggle in that moment to get up. Slowly pulling himself up, only to fall over, completely unable to balance himself, Nappa's anger grew so great that he started to quiver. What the hell just hit him? That one was for Yamcha. Goku said seriously. Nappa managed to finally stand on his own 2 feet. Raditz had never, ever seen Nappa look this mad. He could barely control himself. How dare you? Nappa shouted. You are nothing but a low level. I am a super elite. You don't seem very elite to me. Goku said with a playful smile. You really aren't that strong, you should probably give up, I don't really want to hurt you more. That was it for Nappa. His furious rage boiled over, he was completely out of control. Power rippled off his body as he began gathering energy, he roared furiously. I don't seem very elite. Well, how does this seem, you bastard? Nappa shouted, throwing the huge energy bolt he'd gathered. Dad, look out! Gohan shouted, just as Krillin shouted, Goku. Dodge it! Shut up! Raditz scolded the two of them before they turned to stare at him. He's in no danger. After those words, he looked nervous himself. Kakarot's power is insane, incredible, and this just may be the beginning. Even for Raditz this was an uncomfortable thought, as he was hardly a defender of the earth. When the two looked back, they saw the bolt hit Goku head on. Goku knew he didn't need to dodge the hit. If anything, he wanted to demonstrate to Nappa how futile this was. The explosion went off right on Goku's head. The waves from the blast sent debris in all directions. As the smoke cleared, just as Raditz said, Goku was completely unharmed. The look on Nappa's face, however, was priceless when this realization was made clear. No way! Nappa shouted. He prepared immediately for another energy blast, only for Goku to appear in front of him, uppercutting Nappa straight into the sky. Appearing behind him, Goku dropped his boot into Nappa's back. That one is for Tien. Falling straight to the earth below, Nappa bellowed out an angry cry. Goku appeared near the landing destination and spinning a backhand into Nappa, sending him flying off to the side instead, his body slamming into the side of one of the many huge craters littering the area. His entire body was buried under the earth from the force of the impact. And that one was for Chiatsu. The ground burst open a second later, energy blowing through rock and earth. Nappa flipped from the hole made in the ground, landing in front of Goku. Raaaaaaah! Immediately charged Goku, swinging his right arm out only to find empty air. Both of Goku's feet planted into his stomach as Goku used the ground below Nappa as a springboard. The huge Saiyan was helpless as he went straight towards the heavens once again. Slowly his speed halted, before he began to plummet back down to earth. Flying up at high speeds, Goku intercepted the falling Nappa, spinning and planting an elbow into his abdomen, sending him flying even faster towards the earth. And that one was for Piccolo. The ground shattered under Nappa like glass once his body made impact. Quietly as this happened, Raditz slowly hovered away from Gohan and Krillin. They were too memorized by the events occurring. The truth of the matter was, he didn't think Kakarot had the stomach for killing. Vegeta for his part saw only one. Nappa was making a fool of them, he was being completely controlled by Kakarot and there was almost no chance of recovery at this point. When Nappa blasted up into the sky to attack Goku once more, finally Vegeta intervened. Nappa froze in mid-flight, his fists ready for blood. His head turned, it hurt just to turn his head in truth. You are done. Get down here immediately, Nappa. Vegeta warned. Nappa turned his head to Goku, face sneering. Now, Nappa. Nappa looked across at Goku. This worm had just humiliated him in front of Vegeta. He was just bested by some low level. Vegeta is going to kill you, Kakarot. I am going to have the pleasure of watching you die. To Goku, this was just signaling the real fight was going to begin. Nappa hadn't been the real threat to the Earth anymore, it was Vegeta. He was glad he could defeat Nappa without killing him. But still, he was overjoyed that Nappa's pride had been destroyed. He lost to a low level. Goku didn't care about such standards, but that wasn't where the joy came from. He'd surpassed an opponent, a powerful one, who was arrogant. Before Nappa could do so much as begin his descent to the ground, Raditz made his move. Goku only saw the tail end of a blur of movement, both his feet crashing into the back of Nappa's skull. The larger Saiyan's jaw spread open as his body lurched forward, before beginning a rapid descent to the earth. His body slapped into the ground almost like a wet piece of meat after the sneak attack, head striking the earth first. Raditz appeared above Nappa just as he turned to look up shakily. Raditz. You pathetic backstabbing Talus. Nappa's slurred words were cut off as Raditz gave a slick, arrogant smile. He looked at the palm Raditz had extended, pointing towards his head. Nappa's eyes went wide and pleading towards Raditz as he realized what was about to happen. If his power level was over 5,000, that would mean that he was about to blow him in half. Panic overwhelmed Nappa's features. Wait, Raditz. I told you I'd kill you, Nappa. No. Goku shouted. The last thing Nappa saw was a brilliant flash of blue-white light from Raditz's palm. Nappa's upper body was blasted away and vaporized into ash by the white-blue beam launched from Raditz's right hand at close range. He then kicked the lower body into the air, and then blasted that away to nothing as well. Pulling his hand back to his side, Raditz just spat where Nappa had once been. Goku, Krillin, and Gohan were left in shock as they witnessed this murder. Raditz! Goku shouted, appearing in front of his brother. You killed him in cold blood. Raditz gave a half sneer to his brother, ironically the one who saved him just a moment early. He would have killed you if it were reversed. Like it or not, it is blood for blood. Raditz shot back. How could he think this way? What drove him to such senseless acts of violence? All Raditz had done was proven he was still at their level. If this is how I thought you'd have acted, you'd have let me, your brother, die instead. Raditz responded, giving a smirk as he leaned forward. As surprising as this may sound, brother, we are on the same side. Raditz said, placing his hand on Goku's shoulder. It was batted aside by the noble Saiyan warrior, staring his elder brother down instead. No, Raditz, we are not on the same side. Not with tactics like that. You are still a monster. After this is over, I will see to it you leave the earth. You started your second chance with cold-blooded murder. Raditz blinked, before glaring at Goku. How dare this ungrateful fool? All it would have taken was one moment of Vegeta getting the upper hand, and Nappa would have attacked from behind. Worse, he may have killed Kakarot's friends, or tried to. By killing Nappa, not only did it satisfy his revenge, but it also protected him. You are soft. Raditz responded. You'll find Vegeta is not, and Nappa was not soft. He said coldly. With that, Goku walked away from him, leaving Raditz behind as Vegeta stood there, smirking. You know, Raditz probably did you a favor. Vegeta said, sounding amused at Goku's reaction to Nappa's death. Besides, if Nappa had embarrassed me anymore, I'd have killed him myself. Goku couldn't believe just how callous this creature was to the death of his own lieutenant. He cared so little about life that he couldn't even value his own teammate. I have to take care of something first, Goku said, flying up towards Krillin and Gohan. First things first, he had to get them to safety before starting this. Vegeta just rolled his eyes, crossing his arms and staring at Raditz. He guessed Kakarot was soft and weak enough to want to get his two midget allies to safety. Will you be sticking around, Raditz? Before Raditz could respond. No, he's not. Goku cut in. Raditz's jaw dropped as his eyes went skywards, towards Goku. Vegeta smirked. Well, Raditz, it looks as though you have a new boss. The prince mocked. Vegeta stared up towards Kakarot. Today hadn't gone as expected at all. Firstly, he certainly wasn't expecting the Earthlings to put up as much of a fight as they did, though their strength was laughable outside of maybe the Green One. Then there was Raditz, the traitor, betraying them over punishing him for his incompetence. Now there was this, a low-class warrior sent to Earth, becoming its defender, and being powerful enough to annihilate Nappa without any visible effort, and without taking a single blow. Worse yet, he didn't want to kill anyone apparently. Well, at least he'd be impressive sport. For Goku's part, however, he stood atop his own set of rocks, staring over at Vegeta. This was really the source of the evil that was coming to attack the Earth. Raditz and Nappa were just the thugs who fought for this beast. A supposed prince who oppressed and destroyed people because of the pleasure of doing so and to profit from it. This would be the most difficult battle of his life. Well, Kakarot, I have a proposal for you. Join me. Now that Nappa is dead, I need a good second in command. You could have anything you wanted. Goku just smiled in response. No, I don't think so. I could never commit the acts of evil you do. Vegeta raised a brow to the comment. It was like talking with a child. The world was black and white to him, wasn't it? Yet he saved Raditz. He was so intent on being good, he saved the lives of potential enemies even. This was going to be a walk. Well then, Kakarot, why don't you come at me? By the time Vegeta had finished his question, Goku was already upon him. To say that the opening stages of this battle were slow would be a complete misinterpretation of what was going on. Goku's assault was a flurry of blows, and Vegeta's defense perfect. The two scattered about the wasteland, engaging one another with quick strikes. However, very shortly it became very clear that Vegeta was the dominant player in this game. With a swift boot to Goku's midsection, the third-class warrior was sent flying back, hitting a rock face and quickly recovering to hover in the air. Krillin felt the powers in the distance, his own feeling increasingly insignificant to them. Goku must have begun pulling out all the stops. But there was something off, something wasn't right. His eyes traced to a flying figure, blasting towards where the fight was. Raditz. Damn, Goku had told him to stay away, and Krillin sincerely doubted they could just tell him not to go. Looking over to Gohan, who just looked tired and worn, Krillin felt the need to go and make sure Raditz didn't interfere with Goku's fight. Maybe he'd betray them to try and get back in good standing with Vegeta even. Either way, they needed to keep an eye on him. Gohan. Krillin said seriously. We've gotta head back, that way. The boy paused, before feeling Raditz's energy rocketing towards the wastelands. He was going to interfere. Right, he said, nodding his head seriously. With that, the two figures blasted off, they themselves heading to interfere. When Raditz slowed himself down finally, stopping just in almost an orbit of the battle, he immediately began trying to suppress his power level. He felt the two powers clashing with an incredible amount of energy, he could barely even comprehend having fighting potentials that high. He'd read Vegeta's power level before, it was another thing to feel it. Kaioken. ×3. Just as he'd arrived, he saw the flashes of blue and red clashing through the sky. What was more disbelieving? Goku was the superior of the two. With a mighty punch being landed on Vegeta's face, the Saiyan warrior was sent flying back through the sky. Moving his gloved hand up to stabilize himself in the air, commanding the energy around him, he gathered power for an energy blast. Hurling the bolt like lightning, the blast chased the dwindling figure in the distance that was Goku. With a flash of movement that Vegeta couldn't even follow, Goku's foot slammed into his chest, sending Vegeta earthbound. His body broke through several rock pillars before smashing into a cliff face, breaking through layers of rock, leaving a hole as his point of entry. Goku stood there breathing, his body heaving from the exertion and his muscles feeling as if they were about to rip themselves apart. Vegeta had been an incredible opponent so far, he'd pushed him to his absolute physical limit. His muscles burned from overuse of Kaioken. He needed to somehow finish this before his body ran out of all of its power and potential. When the cliff he'd kicked Vegeta into exploded, he guessed that the fight would continue. Standing there with his arms extended out furiously, Vegeta cried out furiously. Goku had already started to blast off towards him, reigniting the Kaioken attack. Throwing a quick punch, trying to intercept Goku, Vegeta did his best to counter Goku's approach. But unfortunately for Vegeta, Goku appeared behind, kicking him in the back and sending the prince flying forward, bouncing off the ground and quickly recovering. Vegeta came back at Goku with a fierce punch, injecting energy into it, making it almost an energy attack in and of itself. Instead of landing this blow, however, Vegeta found Goku's own punch embedded in his abdomen. Vegeta felt pain like he'd not felt in years. The whole battle seemed to have a noise about it, and that noise silenced beyond the barely audible groans of Vegeta as he slowly stepped back, holding his stomach in desperate pain. Blood even trickled from his mouth. To say the fight was undecided at this point would have been foolish. It appeared Vegeta was finished. Even when battle re-engaged a moment later, it was very clear Vegeta was finished. Each blow was blocked, and each blow in turn sent the Saiyan Prince back. Finally, Goku began almost a rhythmic dissection of Vegeta. A series of blows landed on the prince, kicks and punches, giving him no time to recover, even battering him before he could hit the ground. Finally, Goku slammed Vegeta's frame into the edge of a cliff, driving his own knee in Vegeta's back, and the edge of the cliff into his belly. Carefully moving back to a lower level on the battlefield, Goku awaited things to continue. But he knew it was over. Vegeta had been left howling in agony on the surface above. His own body could barely keep together, but he knew Vegeta was done. The battle could continue for only a short time. When he saw Vegeta rise, however, he smiled. He wasn't going to quit, just as he wasn't. Pulses of pain shot through his muscles, however, the Kaioken taking its toll on its very operator. Raditz, watching from the side, realized what Vegeta was going to do. Shit. Vegeta looked furious, just as mad as Nappa had been as he was being destroyed by Goku. Power began to gather through his body. Dodge this next attack if you can. But even if I miss, this whole planet is going to explode. Vegeta cried out, finally a purple aura completely covering him as he took off into the sky. On the ground below, Goku's body reignited with the red aura. The two powers were growing rapidly. Lightning traced across the sky around Vegeta, while whole rock formations tore apart under the power of Goku's power being unleashed. Gallic Gun, Kamehameha. The two blasts were released just in time for Krillin and Gohan to see. Blue and purple beams collided, and the world around them simply broke. There was no better word for it, the landscape was catastrophically destroyed. Boulders were shattered, cliffs collapsed, debris exploded in mid-air just from being in the presence of the two powers colliding. Raditz had seen whole planets destroyed. He'd seen Vegeta's Gallic Gun a dozen times. What he'd never seen was Vegeta's blast be countered, least of all by an attack that he'd known to be so weak in its prior use. The Kamehameha wave was a Goliath now, crashing against the colossus of Vegeta's attack. Kakarot was saving the world, and Raditz couldn't believe it. Kaioken, ×4. It had to be done, Goku determined. As it was, his body couldn't keep up the ×3 any longer, which meant his beam would begin to fade. He had to end the standoff now, even at the expense of his own body. A huge pulse burst through the Kamehameha wave. The stream of purple energy now seemed to become increasingly insignificant. No, no. Vegeta's words echoed out as his beam was repulsed. Finally, there was no purple left, and Vegeta was directly hit by the wave. Fragments of armor blasted in different directions as he went screaming into the sky as the blue wave carried him. Wide eyes of surprise were written across Yajirobe, Raditz, Krillin, and Gohan's faces as they saw Vegeta seemingly defeated in one climatic moment. A low-class born Saiyan had just defeated the supposed most powerful known Saiyan in the universe. This left Raditz with a sense of awe as he couldn't take his eyes off the sky. Then, behind his awe, he felt something. Vegeta's power, it hadn't disappeared yet, or merged with the beam. Which meant he was still alive. Goku could feel it as well. Damn, he was in no condition to continue the fight at all. All right, Dad. Gohan shouted, however, getting an ire-filled glance from Goku, who realized his son and Krillin had disobeyed him. Gohan, Krillin, I told you two to get out of here. But Goku, we saw Raditz heading here and wanted to make sure he didn't intervene. Krillin shouted back. Goku immediately started feeling out for Raditz's power, looking in each direction for it. However, a blue bolt of energy, containing Vegeta within it, came hurtling towards the earth, crashing into the ground a dozen meters in front of Goku, looking furious. Goku knew that his only remaining hope was the spirit bomb. His own power was too depleted and his body too ruined to finish this fight. Well done, Kakarot. You have surprised me, Vegeta admitted as he started to calm. An arrogant smirk appeared across his face. And I see you have conveniently destroyed this planet's moon. But that is fine. I will show you the true power of the Saiyans, something you lack completely due to your handicap of not having a tail any longer. A ball of moonlight appeared in his hand. Blinking and remembering his own tail in that moment had been ripped off by Nappa, Raditz realized how bad this had just become. Without a tail he couldn't transform, but Vegeta. Oh, it didn't take long exactly. Vegeta had completely overpowered Goku in a matter of minutes, just as Raditz guessed he would have. Gohan and Krillin were sent fleeing for cover. Every moment of watching the fight was almost painful, the pair even traveling miles throughout their battle, as Goku tried to gain distance for some special attack. However, Vegeta in his ape form was just too powerful. They watched as finally Goku was completely immobilized, his legs crushed by Vegeta. No more running away, too bad, isn't it, Kakarot? The voice boomed. Goku was too busy screaming in agony on the ground to respond. Time to die. Raising his arm and pointing out the index finger, Vegeta intended to crush Goku. Instead, he found an energy wave colliding with his right eye, fusing the eyelid shut and badly burning his face. Blood ejected from the wound at high velocity as Vegeta staggered back, the ape now howling with agony. But that was all Goku had left. Angry hands reached down, scooping him up. Just for that, we'll make this slow. Krillin and Gohan watched together as this unfolded. They had to do something. Hearing his father's cries of agony, knowing full well Vegeta was crushing him alive, Gohan found himself rushing to intervene only to be stopped by Krillin. "I've got a plan, Gohan," Krillin finally said, just as Yajirobe walked over to the pair. "Well, look, it's the kid," Vegeta boomed, looking down at Gohan. Vegeta was still in the process of crushing Goku as he referenced Gohan shouting at him. "I said stop it. Stop hurting my father." "Well, let me start by saying no. I am not going to stop hurting your father. In fact, this may surprise you, I'm going to kill him." Destructor Disc. The disc went flying towards Vegeta, who noticed easily in time, jumping instead of being cut in two. The disc slashed through the pillar which Gohan current stood upon, before coming crashing down. He kept his feet stable, however. "Fools. Do you think me an idiot? As if the kid would challenge me alone, let alone the fact that my ears can pick up a pin drop a kilometer away." Then there was a sudden burst of pain where his tail had once been. The short, fat human holding a katana made a run for it. The huge tail plummeted to the ground before landing with a boom, flexing naturally as the nerves were separated. "No. What have you done?" The huge beast howled, staggering back, his form slowly shrinking from the massive ape monster, to the human-sized monster that all could recognize as being Vegeta. Vegeta's frame stood there, shivering from the effect of the transformation. You little bastards. So you want to die, is that it? Well, get ready," he snapped furiously, looking first to Krillin, then to Gohan. "Gohan, look out." Within a second he'd taken off, knocking Gohan off his rocks, in both senses, and kicking him into a pile of dirt and sand a few meters below. When Gohan got up, all he had to look forward to was a punch in the stomach. The boy hunched over in pain, staggering back. Krillin's would-be intervention was short-lived. As soon as the human warrior approached Vegeta, flying at full speed, he was kicked away helplessly. His body hit a cliff, and fell limply to the ground. He seemed completely unable to rise. With that, Vegeta picked up Gohan. "Well now, you're Kakarot's kid, aren't you?" he said coldly, before headbutting the boy. "You are just as useless and weak as your father." And with that, he threw Gohan helplessly next to Goku some distance away. The two of them lay there, Goku clearly in worse shape. Gohan just felt pain, but looked towards his father as Goku struggled to speak. "Gohan, you need to get up. You're our only hope to hold him off any longer," Goku said. It wasn't a position he wanted to put his son into, but Raditz clearly had taken off since Vegeta transformed. Worse, without Gohan holding off Vegeta, he couldn't help Krillin form the spirit bomb. It was something he knew Gohan was up to the task for, but as a father it was a terrible thing to throw your son to a wolf as hungry as Vegeta was. Reaching out his hand to Gohan, Goku smiled as best he could despite his position. Gohan looked up, smiling briefly to his father, trying to reach out himself. "You can't give up, Gohan." "Dad, I'm scared." "Son, don't be scared. Piccolo trained you very well. You have to do this. I believe in you, Gohan." he said, reaching out his hand. Only to be stopped rather abruptly by Vegeta. Vegeta's grin was born of a sinister intent as he pulled back from Goku, his knee leaving his side as Goku coughed up blood helplessly. Please, that boy couldn't stop me, Kakarot. Why even give him the sick idea that he could? If you are lucky, I may spare him after you die. Maybe he wants a job, and if he doesn't, he can die right along with you. Vegeta said, before shoving his boot down on Goku's now broken ribs. It was then that Gohan shot to his feet. Stop it, he shouted furiously. Vegeta turned, seeing Gohan ready to fight. Good, that's what I want to see. Let's see how much of a Saiyan you are. With that, Gohan attacked, flying straight into Vegeta and landing a vicious kick on his face. Vegeta was shocked, being sent flying back and towards the air. Goku, meanwhile, turned his attention to Krillin. Krillin, quickly, you have to come here. He needed to transfer the remaining energy of the spirit bomb. Vegeta felt his body flying back after Gohan's second kick. That kid's power must have increased dramatically over the last few moments. He was getting tired of all these fluctuating power levels. With that, his leg snapped out, catching Gohan across the face as he spun about to stop his fall. Both fighters balanced themselves in the air. Vegeta narrowed his one working eye as he prepared himself. He was exhilarated from the new challenge as Gohan assaulted him once again. The two began exchanging blows in the air, before finally Vegeta took the advantage with a brutal right hook, sending the boy rapidly back. Well now, kid, just what are you going to do? Vegeta's question was answered as a huge blue energy bolt came flying down from the sky, hitting Vegeta head-on, sending him into a dive straight towards the Earth itself. There was an explosion that followed, of course. Gohan froze in the air, before looking up. Gazing down towards the crater was an exceptionally nervous-looking Raditz. His palm was still outstretched as he realized he'd just attacked, and likely harmed, Vegeta. This was the death sentence he knew he'd receive. Vegeta's power was still immense, however he was either going to get killed sooner or later. He might as well die with the best chances possible of killing his prince. There was a furious almost scream from the crater below as the smoke and dust cleared. Vegeta looked up, his eye cracked with fury as he stared directly at Raditz. Is that all you can do? Attack from behind. Well, now I'm going to show you what happens when it doesn't pay off, you useless third-rate coward. Vegeta shouted, energy forming in both his hands. You and the kid are finished, you hear me? Finished. Looking towards his nephew briefly, making eye contact, Raditz knew he still didn't have the eyes of a warrior. Kid, uncle, Raditz said bluntly. Follow my lead. Krillin carefully stood there, blue orb hovering above his hand as he stared in bewilderment. Remember, Krillin, you need to only attack once you feel the time is right. Goku said weakly. That is the only shot we're going to make, we cannot make another one. With a nod and feeling almost sick to his stomach at the idea the entire world was on his shoulders, and not Goku's, Krillin accepted his role in the defense of the Earth. Don't worry, I have faith in you, Krillin. Goku said. If only I had faith in myself. Krillin thought to himself, but nodded to Goku regardless. He looked for a good vantage point all the same. When he reached the highest point he could, he looked down at the battlefield, watching it unfold. In the midst of vicious, desperate battle against uncle and nephew, an alliance of necessity, Vegeta found himself trying to push the offensive. Raditz's fist shot over Vegeta's head as he ducked, only to find Gohan's fist connecting with his face as the three sparred in the air. Once the blow had landed, the blood was in the water as it were. Raditz's knee slammed into Vegeta's abdomen and Gohan's leg came about, kicking the prince in the back. When Vegeta was forced almost to the ground, before pulling up, he shot right back towards the two, snarling like a rabid animal almost. Using some of his power, he boosted his speed, appearing above the pair. Spinning into a kick, Vegeta began his assault, Raditz raised his arms to block, however he spun about the other way immediately. Chopping Gohan down towards the ground, Vegeta turned his attentions back to Raditz. This left Raditz and Vegeta to square off alone for the moment in the sky. Raditz felt himself rushing power to his forearms and hands as he powered his next attack. He had no idea what Kakarot and the midget were doing, however he felt a radical power in the hands of the midget, clearly they intended to unleash it on Vegeta. So, how it would be released was still up for debate. Did you really think that intervening would somehow save you, Raditz? You've become so soft and weak you now fight for the humans, or at least for the one I had Nappa kill. You are pathetic, and just as much of a failure as you've always been. Vegeta said furiously. Vegeta was preparing his own set of energy attacks as well, it was obvious. I'll be glad to be rid of you, Vegeta. I feel sick I followed your rules for so long. Is that a conscience bugging you, Raditz? Raditz smiled, and it was a sinister smile, like looking at the devil give you a grin. No, Vegeta, it's because you are such a pathetic, whining coward. Who fears Frieza and everything else? Your ego is huge, but just like your body, your bravery is lacking in size. An intense sound of hatred came from Vegeta, throwing his energy blast, just as Raditz threw his. Vegeta's energy beam overwhelmed Raditz's, who dodged to the side of the bolt only to have Vegeta's fist thrown into his chest. Knocking him off balance and disrupting his defense, Raditz saw what was coming next. Vegeta landed another punch, and then another, before double axe handle smashing him from above. The older brother of Goku went flying, dropping straight into the soil below. It was then that the energy blast started to come in. Well, shit, Raditz said. He saw the dozens of blasts descending towards him as Vegeta unloaded more and more shots. He raised his arms to defend himself. There was no time to move. He felt something grab his arm, however, looking over he saw the kid. In a blur of motion, Raditz felt himself moved just in time. In the background a series of blasts annihilated where they had once been. Raditz felt pain shooting through his side and back, but knew he'd be back in the fight shortly, however what he didn't understand was what was staring him in the face. Are you alright? Gohan asked quietly, looking back out towards the skyline. Vegeta was looking for them. Where are you, cowards? Vegeta shouted. Raditz looked back towards the kid. He'd just risked his own neck to save him. Why? It would have been better to attack Vegeta to buy more time. Maybe the kid was just stupid. I'm fine. Raditz half lied, wincing. No way, you look hurt. Look, hold on, I'll go deal with Vegetable Head for a minute. Just gather your energy and get ready to help, K. Seeing the kid staring at him with a kind of pleasant attitude wasn't some Raditz was accustomed to. Gohan's features, however, as if on cue, switched to those of a serious warrior, and he blasted back off to meet Vegeta. Fine then, I guess it's just time for me to kill Kakarot and Baldy then. Vegeta shouted spitefully. Hey, you big bully, I'm down here. Gohan shouted back up towards Vegeta, who blinked, looking down at the kid. Really? Raditz wouldn't come out, instead he had to face this stupid kid. Gohan for his part felt a confidence he'd not before. Vegeta looked so small up there. Nothing but a big bully who fought those weaker than him. So, what are you going to do, brat? Tell me it's entertaining at the very least. Vegeta then felt something. For the first time, he could almost feel the energy inside the boy. It was an incredible feeling, and it was terrifying all at once. He felt the boy's power multiplying multiple times over. Masenko. The golden bolt left Gohan's hands, heading directly at Vegeta. At the last moment, Vegeta plunged his fist into it, sending the blast flying off to the north, streaking through the air without direction or control before exploding into the emptiness of the wasteland. That was enough for Vegeta. He zipped to the ground, charging Gohan directly, sweeping in with a kick to the boy's midsection, sending him flying back towards a set of rocks. For Krillin, he felt it. He felt that moment Goku told him about. Spirit Bomb. The attack went sailing towards Vegeta just as he was preparing to continue his assault. Vegeta turned about, seeing the Spirit Bomb approaching him. He felt himself barely able to understand what was coming towards him. What the hell is that? He asked in shock. With a leap, Vegeta managed to dodge it. Raditz watched from the side as the boy who had saved him moments ago was condemned to die by his own father's collaborative attack. Barely pulling himself to his feet, his legs and back working again, he prepared himself to rush in, only realizing it was too late. The boy looked into the face of death like a Saiyan should, however. It was when he put his hands up and bounced the attack back that Raditz blinked, left in disbelief on his face, before he saw the bolt now heading right back towards Vegeta. When the Saiyan Prince turned his head and looked down, he knew what was coming. No. The Spirit Bomb hit with a deafening sound, before it surged in power, blasting all around Vegeta. His body looked as thought it was being electronically baked in the center of this monstrosity of an energy attack. His screams of agony echoed out across the wasteland, before his body shot straight into the sky once more, except this time, on a jagged path, and with each jag in the path there was an explosion of energy, further wrecking Vegeta's body. We did it! Krillin shouted with joy. Barely able to do so, Goku looked over to Krillin, who was sitting there looking just exhausted. What a long day, what fighting had occurred. Goku had never experienced such an intensive, to-the-wire battle, the planet itself was even in jeopardy from one attack. Man, that was too close. Krillin said, almost falling back. Gohan for his part just sat next to his father, looking even more tired than Krillin. At least he's finally gone. There was only one figure standing, looking at the three of them and crossing his arms. His clothes were almost annihilated, shreds of his jeans and shirt were all that seemed to remain. Raditz stared at the three of them for a moment. He could finish all three of them off in an instant, it would be easy. All he needed to do was open his palm and point it at them. Then he could finish this world off and place it for sale. With Nappa, Vegeta, and Kakarot dead, he'd be the last Saiyan alive. It would be just that easy to finish his brother off. However, they had helped him kill Nappa, even if they did not intend to do so, and then there was the fighting with Vegeta, where the kid had actually saved him. He was getting soft, he thought almost violently. It was an infuriating feeling to have. It was then everyone remained quiet, hearing something in the distance. It was like the sound of raining artillery almost, at least to Raditz's ears. It was then, not 10 meters away, Vegeta's body slapped into the ground, bouncing at least once before laying utterly still. No way. Raditz looked at this with something stuck in this throat, a thick lump or some sort. There was no way Vegeta survived all that. It can't be. Gohan whispered as he looked over. Maybe he's dead already, Krillin asked, walking over to the prone Vegeta. Yay. Thank goodness, it looks that way. Krillin confirmed, appraising Vegeta from a good foot away. Good thing too, now we don't have to look at his ugly face anymore. Vegeta's eye opened however, as he grinned. Whose face is ugly? Krillin jumped back, shrieking in terror. Gohan cried out in fear as well. Raditz didn't cry out, but was certainly in shock, as was Goku. As Vegeta slowly began to rise, he spoke. Was that it? Was that all? He rasped, clearly his lungs not working as well as they once had. I am going to finish all of you off, and then once I've gained enough of my strength back, I'll kill everyone on this planet. With lightning-quick reflexes, he slapped Krillin aside violently. Vegeta shambled forward like a zombie, his body urging each step almost with raw willpower rather than his body's remaining functionality. He stared down Raditz even as he walked, the much fresher Saiyan still intimidated by his old boss, especially now. No more games. Why won't all of you just die already? It was then that he stopped, increasing his power dramatically before unleashing it all in a huge energy wave in all directions. The wave was still overwhelming in power. Gohan, Krillin, Goku, and even Raditz were sent helplessly in all directions. When the smoke cleared, only one of the fighters was even moving. Raditz, now painfully sat up, his body barely managing to pull himself up. Vegeta, however, started to nod off. He could barely stand, before he shook himself too. The two Saiyans stared one another down. This was it. Both Raditz and Vegeta couldn't afford to fight long, however Raditz's injuries were far from as extensive. He wouldn't bleed to death soon, for example, whereas Vegeta would. Fine then, you coward. See if you can finish me. Vegeta shouted, feeling himself summoning the last of his strength. With better movement, Raditz quickly rushed in, conserving as much energy as he could. He dodged easily under Vegeta's first attack, slamming his knee into the prince's ribs. The Saiyan's mouth gaped open with agony from the blow. Grabbing Vegeta's left arm and hoisting it up, Raditz then mimicked the maneuver he'd seen Violet perform on a human commando months ago. He snapped Vegeta's arm after he hoisted it over his shoulder and brought it crashing down onto it. The Saiyan prince cried out in agony from his bone being snapped like a twig, and his elbow being dislocated. As soon as Raditz let go, he fell to his knees. No, not like this. Vegeta thought as he moved his one arm to support the other. It was then that Raditz sharply threw his elbow back, smashing it into the middle of Vegeta's face. He fell to the ground, blood now streaming from his nose as well. Raditz placed his boot on his chest, looking down at Vegeta arrogantly. Raditz pressed down, and revealed to Vegeta just how many of his ribs were broken. That move I broke your arm with, Raditz said bluntly, is something I picked up off the woman you killed earlier today. Vegeta just spat to the side, a mixture of saliva and blood. Sneering back before shoving his boot down again, causing Vegeta to scream out in pain, Raditz felt a wave of satisfaction overcome him. I'm going to make this one slow, Vegeta. Just as I am sure you and Nappa would have done for me. It's the least I can do for an old friend. Vegeta finally did speak up. Through his pain-filled expression, he glared at Raditz. Raditz. Yes, Vegeta, you talk too much. With widened eyes as Vegeta's one good arm shot out towards him, opening his palm and as blue energy formed in it, Raditz realized his folly. Vegeta had been gathering this power the whole time. No, not Agai. Raditz felt the beam hit him head-on, burning away at him as it discharged violently, blasting him into the side of a rock formation. The blast that followed left shards of rocks raining from the sky. Vegeta was in worse shape now that he was moments ago. He couldn't even move his left arm anymore, and it hurt just by its very being there. Stumbling towards Gohan, he found yet more terrible news. The boy's tail had grown back. Grasping the furry appendage, he just turned, looking up to the artificial moon he'd helped create. His tail grew back, plus he's still getting light from the moon. He realized. Dropping the tail, he began forming energy again in his right hand. The kid had to go. Banzai. Vegeta only had time to turn his head, before a fat man carrying a sword, the same one who cut off his tail, cut clean through his armor. His one good arm reaching back as he fell to his knees, he could only utter. You cut through my armor, he whimpered, before collapsing. Yajirobe began his mockery of Vegeta. I got him, defeated by the great Yajirobe. Yay, take that you jackass. It was then that Vegeta slowly climbed to his feet. How dare you, you filthy bastard, he breathed. This was very awkward for the human warrior. Yajirobe's mood immediately changed, of course. Well, I was just kidding, you see. I didn't mean to cut you, are you okay? He asked, feigning support for Vegeta. We should be friends. I mean, kick. Blood spewed from Yajirobe's mouth and nose from the impact as Vegeta's foot crashed into his cheek. It wasn't long before another blow was landed, this time sending Yajirobe into a boulder, shattering the boulder itself and leaving him helpless. "I'll make you pay for what you've done to me," Vegeta murmured. However, he realized something at that very moment. The kid. Turning around, he rushed back over, as quickly as he could, but it was too late. Gohan was staring directly into the moonlight. Oh, shit. And with that, Gohan's form started to grow, and Vegeta could do little about it. The shame of defeat. Vegeta's body barely responded anymore. He had only one arm to use to drag himself, the other even more useless. The great ape had completely overwhelmed him. The kid's rage was too vast in that state to be controlled, however, and he did manage to cut his tail off, but not in time to avoid being crushed by him. He doubted many of his bones were still functional. In fact, he had a great deal of evidence to support it. His arms struggled to finally drag him to the entrance of his pod, just as his body gave out. There was just no strength left in Vegeta's body. Even in desperation, he couldn't climb into the space pod. It was then that the human started to catch up to him. The bald-headed human now bearing the sword of the Fat One. No, this couldn't end like this. He was the prince of the planet Vegeta, and of all Saiyans. Was this how it was to end? At the hands of a bald, weakling human. On a world no one ever heard of until someone had mentioned the legendary magic balls. Where had it all gone wrong? He'd have been better off if Raditz had just died on this mud ball. The warrior in question had become so weak that he had been willing to betray him, his prince, over a simple disciplinary action. Not only a disciplinary action, but one that was part of purging this god-forsaken planet. Now he realized, perhaps Raditz hadn't had the stomach for the job, simply because these humans looked so Saiyan. He was glad he killed that purple-haired, obstinate woman, especially now. He would see Raditz suffer and die for his treachery. Kakarot and his son were his only two other subjects, and they would suffer and die the same. Kakarot especially for being even weaker in will than Raditz. He didn't fight for the vengeance of one woman, he fought him because he was the defender of this blasted place. His son was his echo as well, a disgrace heaped upon disgrace. Vegeta vowed in his mind that he would annihilate this planet at his next opportunity, and kill everyone here. It had served as nothing but a beacon of shame for the Saiyans now. It broke the remaining Saiyans. Nappa died here, he was defeated, and the others defected. Still, the fantasies he thought of in his mind did little to console him any further as he heard Krillin's foot stop next to him. He was kicked onto his back, and could only look helplessly as the human arched the sword for the kill. Vegeta felt his heart pounding in his head, and then saw Baldy freeze. The two of them there for only the briefest seconds. Krillin, let him go. He heard Kakarot say in a strained voice. It was barely able to be heard, but Vegeta could still make it out. He deserves a second chance, just like Piccolo did. And just like Raditz. Let him go. Show him that we have mercy, and compassion. Vegeta's mind raced at what was being said. They were going to just let him go. Like that. The fools. He'd see this planet come crumbling down around them. With this new gained knowledge, Vegeta felt his strength slowly inch back just enough that his one good arm pulled him towards his pod again, barely propping himself up against it. But Goku, he'll just come back and do the same as he did now. We have to stop him, here and now. Krillin turned about, putting the sword to Vegeta's neck, preparing to make the final blow. No, Krillin. This isn't the way. Be strong, Krillin, please. Show him mercy. Vegeta felt his body trembling, for the first time since he could remember, save for when in a room with Lord Frieza, he was helpless, completely at the mercy of someone else. It was terrifying. Finally, Krillin dropped the sword. Vegeta felt a weight lifted off his shoulders, slowly turning and crawling back into his space pod. As the door began to shut, the human couldn't even look at him. I'll be back, and when I get back, I'll show you how merciful I can be, as I crush the life from your bodies, and stare into your eyes as I do. He barely managed, before the door finished closing, and he passed out. With that, the ship blasted into space. So much for that brilliant idea. How much time did you waste with all of that, The shortest of the figures inquired, seemingly entertained by the failure of the experiment. The taller, deeper-voiced figure spoke. Let us not forget who is the master here. He reminded. I seem to have forgotten my place, forgive me. The taller figure, despite being irritated, stepped away from the circling pool of madness between them. In the pool they'd found probabilities, chances, which outcomes were most likely. Raditz was supposed to help the Saiyans kill all of Goku's remaining friends, instead he helped save them, and would now be an ally of theirs, potentially, for the foreseeable future. All things still contain risk, remember that. His deep voice uttered. However, I have already formulated a new plan. Oh, yes. They will need to go to the planet Namek. I can only project my image for a limited amount of time. However, an even greater threat awaits on Namek. I thought we wanted to avoid him being involved in the plan, because you said he was far too dangerous to be controlled. Yes. Frieza will be vastly too difficult to manipulate. However, who said we needed to manipulate Frieza? The larger figure asked, a grin appearing under his hood. Planet Electron 2. The last of the feeble defenders fell at the feet of the fighter on this now dead world. It was overly satisfying considering just how powerful he'd become on this world. Another victory, another step towards final revenge. The legends were true about everything, he was a god amongst mortals now. It wouldn't be long and he'd be able to challenge Frieza himself. His scouter, however, started to blip. An insignificant power level had made itself known. Please tell me you are the last of this world's pathetic defenders. I am hardly one of its defenders, mighty Turles. The short figure walked in front of him, his hood over his features. The small frame turned his body slightly, however, before looking up towards Turles. His pale green skin was evident. You must have improved greatly from planting the tree of might on this world. Turles smirked. When he first arrived on this world with his men he was a low level. He had a mere power level of 1,500, his men, only 500 to 1,000. Now, his own power level was over 42,000, and his men's anywhere between 4,000 to 18,000. He didn't share as much with them, obviously. But that was because he was soon to be Lord Turles. After a few more worlds, he would crush Frieza, and then he could rule the universe. Yes, my men and I have done quite well. However, I regret to inform you that you will be killed in a rather short period of time. To this, Turles blinked, before starting to laugh. Is that so? And please elaborate how I am to be killed, dwarf. Defecting from Frieza's empire is a risky business, especially when you steal a ship. When word comes out you are annihilating this part of the galaxy, you meet a rather short end at the hands of a being known as Cooler. He is vastly superior to you in every sense, so much so that you could consume the fruit from the tree of might on another dozen worlds, and you may start to annoy him. Turles was left standing there. He had few words. Who is Cooler? He is Frieza's older sibling. He runs another part of the galaxy than Frieza. In fact, I believe he claims ownership of this very planet. Escaping Frieza's space just meant going into Cooler's. By the way, he watched Frieza destroy your home world, and thought it was a funny, small expenditure of power. Another Frieza. His hand formed a fist. Was there no end to these creatures? No matter how much he killed, no matter how much he slaughtered and fought, would he ever surpass them? I am here to offer you a chance of a lifetime, Turles. Turles' attention turned to the dwarf again. Who are you? You may call me, the Catalyst. He chuckled. Instead, Turles reached to grab him, only to find he'd already zipped away. Now, you wouldn't want to attack someone only intent on helping your goals, would you, Turles? The Saiyan felt frustrated and annoyed. He almost growled before he stopped looking for where the voice now originated from. Well then, spit it out. What is it? We will offer you a chance at eternal life, and a chance to stop Frieza all at the same time. The voice said with amusement. How so? Turles responded. Eternal life is a myth. Only it's not, I can assure you. There is a set of Namekian artifacts known as the Dragon Balls. They will grant whoever collects all 7, any wish he desires. So you are saying I can use these to wish for eternal life? Absolutely, came the delighted response. However, I would hurry. Frieza is currently on his way to Namek, to gather the very Dragon Balls we are referring to. If he obtains them, he will have eternal life himself. Turles felt an immense gust of wind, and his scouter stopped beeping. He was left alone, standing there. Could he trust this dwarf? Master Turles, Amon said, you wanted an update on if we could track Frieza. No, I didn't. Yes, report. He's on his way to Namek according to comm traffic. Turles felt a chill run through his body. And to think, there are more monsters like him out there in the darkness of space. With a sinister smile, almost as sinister as Frieza's could ever be, Turles made eye contact with Amon. Get the ship ready, and set course for the planet Namek. Amon looked at Turles as if he was insane. Unknown location. When the smaller hooded figure returned, he looked towards his taller master. There, I've got him sent on his way to Namek. I fail to see how he will be the difference maker. The pool of time swirled between the two, however. It showed the Saiyan locked in brutal conflict with others, all over the Dragon Balls. So long as Frieza is defeated, and Goku's friends are killed, permanently, I care little for the outcome. Turles can live or die. And what of Goku himself? What I would give, to destroy him myself. But such an opportunity will not be available to me for some time. With that, the taller, Catalyst, walked towards the edge of nothing. And where are you off to? You must be careful not to exert energy too greatly, otherwise you may find yourself in hell again, rather than here. There was an annoyed growl from the other side. I am aware of that. I am going to see who else can cause trouble for these fools, without splashing too many waves. Deep space. I remember it, you know. The old voice said. Remember what, my lord? The younger man responded. He bore the black uniform of the honor guard, as did his counterparts. He remembered when they were first found by their lord, their master. They'd been so lost. Fortunate had surely benefited them, however, for being found by their wise master. I remember our home world. I remember the lush blue trees and great green oceans of it. It was called Namek. The room had 4 younger, green-skinned Nameks in it, with the elder, the wise man in the midst of them, sitting upon his justly earned throne. TV guides and reference. Yes, master, as you have told us before. I remember our power. We were great once. I was amongst the youngest at the time. We'd unlocked something truly magnificent, something you have inherited in your blood. I remember how all the lesser Nameks looked upon us. They venerated us as the gods we rightfully were. There was a lowering of all their heads, at the shame. The shame of what had been stolen from them by their supposed brethren. We are forever forsaken from our home world. It has been snatched from us by the power of the Dragon Balls. They meant for us to wither and die. But you 4 have brought me hope, hope that one day we may extract our revenge upon the lesser beings of Namek. He coughed, roughly, before moving his hand over to his bowl of pills, each one meant to extend his life. Slipping one into his mouth, he chewed and swallowed the yellow delicacy. Lord Slug, finally his chief lieutenant said, rising to look at his master. We are honored you found us, scattered throughout the galaxy. Each one of them was a descendant of the lost tribe of Namek, the tribe from before the great cataclysm, the Super Nameks. Despite their youth, they could only hope to become as powerful as Lord Slug, the last of the true Super Nameks. Slug for his part smiled, but it was the kind of smile one would expect from a shark. This was the closest thing to a legacy he could leave across the galaxy. Unfortunate he and his tribe never created their own Dragon Balls, nor was that information passed on. He was doomed to die a death unworthy of his power. He remembered not 500 years earlier, his empire spanned the stars. Lord Slug was a name to be feared in the heavens, billions lived and died at his whim. But with age, his power had begun to fade. But fate weaves a strange thread, as he'd found these children on two worlds, the children at the time. Each one the children of two other super Namex, their legacies to the galaxy before their expiration. Now there was at last unity amongst the last survivors, and it was a unity of course, under Lord Slug. Slug himself finally rose from his throne, turning to one of his scientists. My lord, unfortunately we have not yet found the solution to the aging process. They all remembered how Slug eliminated his lieutenants, all for being inferior to his new Namekian chargers, even when they were yet younger. That was not the question I was to ask you, Kathuja. Oh, well, my lord, what is it you desire? I wish for you to find the closest base currently operated by the World Trade Organization. Of course, but may I ask why, my lord? No, Slug said through narrowed eyes. His honor guard immediately moved to his side. The largest of these four, and arguably the strongest, was a Shadden. He was almost as huge as Lord Slug himself. His thick jaw, heavy set, broad shoulders, and muscle made him look more like a wall of muscle than a Namek. Next was Staff, the true lieutenant of Lord Slug, respectful, professional. His stature was not his size and strength like a Shadden, but his ability to do all that was asked of him. He was a great fighter, superb commander, and very wise advisor. Best yet, he was a fast learner. He carried sharp features, and an athletic build. The serious scowl his face bore rarely left his face, even when he was truly enjoying himself. After that came Kolchako, arrogance personified. He rarely got on with Staff especially. Intelligent enough however, also to avoid angering Lord Slug. He was easily the most agile of all Lord Slug's lieutenants. Small and light by Namek standards, Koshiko also happened to have the most sinister streak of his comrades, even by Super Namek standards. Finally there was Shell, the quiet one. Youngest of the brothers and cousins, he bore most resemblance to his brother Staff. Neither fast nor slow, however what he lacked in his brother's wisdom, commanding abilities, and learning, he easily made up for in raw energy. What would you have us do, Lord Slug? Staff asked. Animated films. Intelligence, my students. One must always be informed, and few are as informed as Frieza and his ilk. What they know, we must know. Of course, Lord Slug. Staff said with a small bow to his master, just as the other, Super, Namex did. Raditz looked at the human doctor with disdain. Please, your friends have asked that we take a look at you. There isn't anything strange going on here. We just want to make sure you are well. Raditz's eyes never left the surgical tray in the background however, noting a needle on it. It almost made him shiver. He had a similar fear of anything that they tried to poke or prod him with at any planet trade base. It wasn't about being afraid of needles even however, it was the fact he felt fine. All these humans wanted was an excuse to grab at him. If they didn't stop it, he'd inform them how he slaughtered a dozen of their colleagues in West City, perhaps that'd get them to back off. Alright, that seems to be enough. Master Roshi said. Let the man be. Clearly he doesn't want our help. Raditz smirked. At least the old human understood. Now all he needed to do was figure out how to get to Namek. He'd overheard them talking in the blue-haired woman's aircraft about the planet Namek, and to say the least he intended to go. If Namek was where there were more Dragon Balls, as Vegeta and Krillin expected, then that was where he had to go. Unfortunately at this time he realized there was a clear and obvious trust issue. Now then, stand aside. He said, referring to the patient's room. You can't go in here, it's family only. Roshi said, trying to think of a way to delay Raditz. In truth, everyone now worried Raditz would take advantage of Goku in his weakened state and kill him. There was a lot of good reason to do this. How convenient, I am his brother, now stand aside. Raditz said, implying he'd move Roshi if needed. Finally, Roshi bowed his head slightly, not to Raditz but to himself. Stepping to the left, he allowed Raditz to pass. Inside the room, Chi-Chi, Bulma, Gohan, Krillin, Ox King, Mr. Popo, and Goku were all there. Goku looked like he was in the worst shape, completely in a massive machine designed to heal his injuries. Gohan and Krillin merely looked slightly bandaged, they'd be fine in no time. They were apparently in argument. He'd overheard the woman Bulma speaking of a spacecraft. He found Kakarot's mate, largely as anything as beastly as that he didn't want to label as a woman, completely repulsive. The flight with her truly tested his resolve to at the very least pretend to fit in for the time being. She was loud, disrespectful, annoying, she even seemed to show open hostilities to Kakarot himself at times. The reason the boy was hardly a Saiyan was clearly her as well, constantly disapproving of all his Saiyan instincts. It was a tragedy to his nephew, but it wasn't his place. Kakarot should have stepped in long ago. The human male, Krillin, was glaring at him with mistrust as well. Raditz could already tell the conversation was progressing swimmingly without him. I'm telling you right now, Gohan, you are not going to Namek. What if anything were to happen to you? Goku tried to intervene, of course. His son not only wanted to go to Namek to bring back his friends, but he of course thought Gohan would love the adventure. I just got you back, and now you already want to run off again. Chi-Chi wailed. Raditz winced as she did, growling. Beast woman, be silent. Raditz snapped finally. The entire room went quiet as soon as the words left his mouth. He looked to Kakarot, whose jaw was open in shock at what Raditz had just done. For some reason Kakarot was scared for him. His facial features almost seemed to say, "What have you done?" Raditz began to wonder exactly what had he done. When he looked at Chi-Chi, she looked completely furious. With one hand she grabbed the Ox King, her father, pulling him into the air. Wait, Chi-Chi. Calm down, he urged. Raditz realized a second later, that there was a distinct reason they all seemed to fear this mad harpy. Planet Frieza 79's outpost. The large hover chair carefully rotated itself through the room. Lord Frieza, the most powerful fighter in the universe, looked ahead coldly. They were supposed to be en route to Namek by now, and instead this cursed ship was being repaired at dock. The workers outside were working feverishly to complete the repairs needed for the cruiser to take off. Zarbon looked nervously to his master, his eyes tracing over to him briefly. Zarbon, Frieza finally said, the name came out almost like a threat already. Why yes, Lord Frieza. Zarbon had worked for Frieza for 30 years as his right-hand man. He knew when to be bold, and he knew when to be frightened. Now was one of those times for the latter. They'd been tied up now for days since things had finally migrated through the food chain about the Dragon Balls. It'd still be another 2 weeks to Namek even when the ship was fixed. Frieza had even tried to see if there was another ship in the area they could travel on, but the only one was King Cold's private battlecruiser. Frieza most certainly didn't want his father to know he was seeking eternal life, for himself alone. Do you remember what you told me before these mechanical failures occurred? Zarbon felt a chill run through his body. That we'd be on Namek within 2 weeks. How long has it been, Zarbon? Dodoria looked at his colleague with sympathy and a sense of dread. This hadn't gone well for the last few people who displeased Frieza. Those 30 years ago even, this was how Zarbon got his job. It has been, as of now, 2 weeks. Frieza's face finally shifted to one of supreme displeasure. His red eyes stared out into the stars from his bridge before he turned his hover chair to face Zarbin directly. When he did, his face back to its calm, calculated self. Tell me, Zarbin, when will we arrive on Namek? The engineers tell me the ship will be fixed in another 10 days, and then it will be 2 weeks from there. Zarbin felt his heart racing as never before. He'd helped annihilate planets for Frieza, organized his armies, was his personal lieutenant. Despite being all those things, he could face an ignominious death at any moment now, due to a technical failure not even related to him. If we do not arrive on Namek in exactly 24 standard days, then, Zarbin, your death will be both exquisite and excruciating. Consider your long track record of success being the only thing which has bought you any additional time. Am I being quite clear? Zarbin swallowed the lump which had formed in his throat, before nodding to Frieza. Yes, Lord Frieza. I will oversee the repairs personally from here on out. See that you do, Zarbin. The entire door to Goku's room was busted. Both the Ox King and Raditz had been blown through it. Or rather, the Ox King, being used as a human missile, was thrown through the door, and Raditz happened to have the misfortune to be standing there at the time. Ox King was still on top of Raditz. In fact, the Saiyan warrior lay back, looking dazed, before he sneered, shoving the king off of him, slowly rising to his feet. So that woman wants to fight? He snarled, before he noticed a huge hand on his shoulder. Maybe you need to calm down some, friend. Ox King offered with a large gentle smile. She just threw you into me, Raditz said, still looking outraged. Kakarot had surrounded himself with a cult of insane people. This man was trying to be nice to him now, and encourage him to be nice. Were they all mad? Once he got off this wretched place, he'd never return. He pulled his shoulder from the huge man, sneering at him. The only reason any of them still lived was he needed access to a spacecraft. He needed to get to the planet Namek. Still, this would push his patience and tolerance to their greatest limits, he was sure. He'd get to Namek, get access to the Dragon Balls, and wish for eternal life, just as Violet recommended he'd done on Earth. He'd killed Nappa earlier. Raditz paused as he realized the full volume of what that had meant. He'd lived and fought at Nappa's side for well over a decade. They had ate the same meals, fought the same enemies. He was a traitor, and he was a traitor for what? For some woman who saw him as a means of surviving her planet's pending apocalypse. He'd been so willing in all of it as well to argue for her life in front of his two allies, even knowing they'd never agree to such a thing. Furious. That was the best word he could use to describe in terms of how he felt. He wasn't just angry with Nappa and Vegeta, he was angry with himself for being such a weakling. Even now he was becoming weaker as he grew in strength. He needed to get off this planet, and stay off this planet, for a very, very long time. Stepping into the room from the completely shattered doorway. If your wife is quite done, Kakarot, he said, avoiding snarling at the woman and killing her on the spot. His arms crossed before he said his next words. I was about to say that the boys should go. Krillin gave a puzzled look. Nobody trusted Raditz, and for good reason. To him, what he was looking at in the room wasn't a man, he wasn't Goku's brother, he was a monster. He could see the hunger for power in his very posture, a posture not so different from all the other despots and beasts they'd overcome. Commander Red, General Blue, Mercenary Tao, King Piccolo, Garlic Jr., Nappa and Vegeta, they were all echoes of one another in some form. In each one of them they could see the same reflection of evil, and Raditz was without a doubt a card-carrying member of their group. Goku, however, looked innocently on at his brother, as far as Krillin could tell. Yay, that sounds like a great idea. Come on, Chi-Chi, it will only be for a few months, and we really need the Dragon Balls on Namek to wish Piccolo back, Goku explained. However, Raditz cut in. I think I should also be going on this little expedition to the planet Namek. Krillin knew it. However, Goku just smiled. Yay, that sounds like a great plan. Raditz blinked, not expecting such a cheerful response. What was Kakarot playing at? He'd remembered his harsh words after he killed Nappa. Why the change of heart? He never trusted changes this abrupt, especially after having served under Vegeta and Frieza. Quick mood changes often meant some kind of sinister plot. What? Goku, are you out of your mind? After all the people he's killed. After what he did to you. And worse, after he acted like a barbarian. No more barbarous than you, my sword-wielding friend. Raditz said, referencing when Krillin had tried to take Vegeta's life while he was helpless. Before Krillin could say anything more to the now smirking Raditz, Goku did finally cut in. I know full well what he's done, Krillin. Look at him, Goku said, his whole body bandaged still as he turned his head to meet Raditz's gaze. He's lived a shallow life of excess and violence, plotting, murdering, and stealing a living. However, he did save you two against Vegeta and Nappa, and he hasn't tried to harm us since then. Goku, Krillin cut in. I cannot go into space with this bastard aboard the ship. Bulma looked fearfully at Raditz herself, she was still terrified of him. In so many ways he was like Goku, physically. But there was that dark core, he'd killed thousands and didn't show a shred of remorse for a moment of it. He'd even tried to kill the Z fighters, and her at the Capsule Corp. She didn't trust him at all, even now she could tell he was acting, playing the role of a friend and advisor when he really only had his own sinister plots. You all seem to be forgetting something. Until Kakarot is healed, I am the strongest one here. He said simply. So what? Krillin demanded. Is that a threat? Hardly. It is a statement of fact. Goku's eyes narrowed as Raditz spoke, speaking of power. He was going to threaten to kill everyone if he didn't get his way. Do you not think Vegeta is going to be after these Dragon Balls as well? Raditz asked. Do you somehow think that he will somehow forget about these? Vegeta will annihilate anything in his path to get the chance of eternal life, including the Namex. I may not be much of a challenge for Vegeta, that is true, but I am certainly better off than your son, or your friend here, Kakarot. A lie hidden within the truth. It was very true Vegeta was more powerful than he was, but he didn't want to go to Namek to protect the Harpy's bastard child, or Krillin. He'd annihilate anything in his path on his quest for the Dragon Balls, the same as Vegeta would. He just needed to gain more power before he could confront his former prince, and the squirts could prove useful until he either had all the Dragon Balls, or had Vegeta at his mercy. Soon, there would be a new order in the universe. Frieza, Vegeta, and any other scum who crossed his path would feel his wrath. Goku, however, saw through the lie. He'd seen what Raditz's true intentions were from the moment he'd walked into the room. He wanted the Dragon Balls for his own selfish gain. Worse yet, he knew he'd be willing to do almost anything for this chance at power. The familial bond between the two of them was near non-existent, but even Goku could see this as the truth. What Goku, however, thought was something Raditz would never admit to. In all that hate, power, hunger, and anger, he could see a small, extremely small pang of good. Some of his pleas to him when they first fought, trying to get him to join his evil cause, were out of real concern. Goku also knew that something radical had to have happened to Raditz to get him to turn on Vegeta and Nappa, something life-altering. He was still curious as to what it was, and even though it had not made him good by any means, it had started him on a different path. To deny Raditz the opportunity to go to Namek, would be to deny him the chance to take a different role in life. Krillin and Bulma were his best friends, and he had little doubt that they couldn't find some common ground with his brother on such an adventure. Gohan had also shown Piccolo a whole different side of himself as well. However, this had to be tempered with caution, he was extremely dangerous. A miscalculation meant that all of this would be for nothing. Goku felt himself staring at Raditz again, knowing it was making his brother uncomfortable. With his mind he almost tried to peel away the layers of thoughts on top of Raditz's mind. The most prominent thoughts amongst them were insecurities. Insecurities about not being strong enough, about being emotionally weak, about avoiding attachment. However, there was a thread there, a broken thread. What a lonely existence you must lead, Raditz. Goku thought to himself quietly. He's right, Goku finally said. Goku. No way. Bulma protested. What's wrong, woman? Raditz asked, turning his smile towards her. The devil was in that smile. I won't try to hurt you this time, I promise. Bulma felt herself cross her arms. Well then I guess we're not going to Namek at all. I won't go with this brute, you can't change my mind. But Bulma, if you don't go, who would fly the ship? That's right, Bulma, Mr. Popo said. Everyone must work together and make compromises. He tried to kill me. Bulma finally shouted angrily, glaring at Mr. Popo then at Goku. I never even got a chance. Raditz said, rolling his eyes and looking away. The less he said beyond the most basic facts, the better. Is that why you blew up half my home? The home my parents lived in. He blew up half the Capsule Corporation. Chi-Chi asked, her mouth dropping in shock. Well, Gohan said, his eyes tracing down. I thought it was more like a quarter. He then said quietly, wanting to keep his head down but at the same time feeling the need to correct everyone. Alright, look, it's not about the fact he tried to blow up half the corp building, alright? We can't possibly let him join us. I mean, don't worry, Bulma, Goku said finally. Just trust me, alright? I promise everything will work itself out. Bulma reluctantly looked towards Raditz, before looking at Krillin and Gohan. Krillin was still glaring at the Saiyan and Gohan looked determined, though he looked determined in the direction of Raditz. Well, in essence, that meant he was glaring at Raditz as well. Raditz rolled his eyes. If you try to mess with our wish to bring everyone back, you'll pay. Krillin reminded. Everyone? Raditz asked. What a joke. Bringing everyone back to life. Why don't you outlaw death with these Dragon Balls? Bring everyone back? What kind of wish was that? Bring them back from what? No, you don't get it. We can wish everyone back from a common occurrence. Krillin explained. For instance, we can wish back everyone Vegeta and Nappa killed. He explained. Raditz froze at the comment, his eyes narrowing on Krillin. Everyone. His head raised slightly. That nagging feeling in the back of his head returned. So when do we leave? He finally asked, turning towards the door. 10 days. Bulma then informed. Wait. Goku said, looking towards everyone. I need to speak with Raditz, alone. Raditz stood there, looking down at Kakarot with his arms folded over his chest as everyone else vacated the room. This had better not be some sappy speech. Raditz could already see it, another preachy monologue from the great and mighty Kakarot, about goodness and virtue. His brother was so naive it was painful, he'd not changed since their first confrontation at the Kame house. Still, he had to play along with anything these miserable earthlings wanted for the moment. He couldn't take the things he needed by force, yet. Raditz, Goku started. We've never really talked, well, not without a fight about to happen, so I'm not really sure how to start this off. It was awkward, and Goku knew it was awkward for both of them. He could see Raditz keeping his facade of good intentions up still, but even behind that this was highly abnormal for both. He doubted there had been much meaningful conversation between Raditz and his comrades over the years. Goku hated to admit it himself, but he'd never even imagined having a brother in his entire life, and the one he was dealt was, well, worlds apart from him. How about with getting to the point? Raditz responded roughly. I know you have your own agenda for the Dragon Balls, Goku then said, wanting to clear the air of any deceptions. Raditz for some reason felt relaxed at Kakarot saying this. It was perhaps the only Saiyan thing he'd seen him do, talk plainly about intentions. It was relieving even to hear another Saiyan for once, especially now. We aren't friends, Raditz. What you've done will have to be answered for one day, to the people of Earth and to countless others. I see in you the chance for you to change though. Goku finally said. But you betrayed my trust when you attacked Nappa. There was almost a sneer at the last remark, Raditz feeling unjustly judged. Did this fool not understand the kind of man Nappa was? He knew Nappa far better. Nappa was even more severe than himself. He was truly a fool, he had to be. As if Nappa was somehow going to turn about and play nicely with everyone. You are a fool, Kakarot. Raditz responded harshly. Did you think Nappa was going to turn around and decide it was time to embrace peace and love? I watched him as he tore men apart and laughed as how easily they came apart in his hands, and I laughed right along with him. The stare Kakarot gave him made him almost for that one moment feel shame. He'd killed Nappa for the very behavior which he himself had demonstrated, and only when it happened to him and someone he cared about, did he find fault and slaughter his former comrade. Worse yet, that stare told him that he was wrong. Raditz felt his hate quickly come to the rescue however. How dare Kakarot judge him? What kind of Saiyan was he? He'd never known the thrill of the hunt, conquering a whole world and utterly obliterating its inhabitants. The slaughter itself was always invigorating. Nappa had every right to laugh when he tore those men apart, and so did he. Goku's stare continued however, finally beginning to crack through Raditz's false calm. Stop staring at me, Kakarot, he demanded, his eyes narrowing coldly. You have no right to judge me. And you have no right to endanger my son, your nephew. Goku told him finally. If you think about it for 1 second, even one, I will hunt you across the galaxy if I have to and make you pay. The Saiyan assured him. The same is true for my friends. Raditz remained quiet at first, his fist tightening, however there was a brief nod. It was a small trade-off to make. He could avoid killing those fools and still obtain what he needed from them. I agree. I will not harm your friends. He finally said. Goku smiled at the remark. Good, the younger brother said. No matter what you may think of yourself, Raditz, you can change. The hatred inside of you will only destroy you. I know that you will let Gohan, Krillin and Bulma make the wish when the time is right, and I know you'll keep them safe. It cannot destroy me if I am immortal, Kakarot. I will take the wish for myself and have eternal life. What was Vegeta's punishment? Goku finally asked. What was so terrible that you betrayed him and tried to kill him and Nappa? Raditz blinked, seeing the look on his brother's face. It was serious and somehow knowing. For a moment he almost wanted to admit to him what it was, perhaps then his brother wouldn't look down at him for killing Nappa. Worse, he thought bitterly, he wanted his approval. Instead of responding to the question, Raditz sneered and growled. I won't answer such a question to you, Goku. Needless to say it was enough, and you should be glad it was enough, otherwise I'd have crushed your skull in my hands, had the so-called prince ordered me to. With that, Raditz turned, beginning to walk from the room. Hey you! Raditz stopped as he exited the room, his large frame turning to see Bulma. I'm not going to have you running around in rags while we're up there. So, that means we'll at least get you some new clothes. Raditz looked down at his nearly completely destroyed clothing, before looking up at the blue-haired woman. He could already tell he was going to hate this one. What Raditz witnessed, he determined, had to be some kind of crime, somewhere in the galaxy. Standing there in the most ridiculous clothes imaginable, poor Gohan was standing there next to the red flight craft, wearing what appeared to be shorts, coat, bow tie, and there was a massive pile of luggage. It reminded him of diplomats. Weak-willed, flimsy creatures who couldn't live one day without modern convenience. The worst part was that he knew his nephew could fight and survive, most probably anywhere on this miserable planet, if not most planets. Quietly Raditz looked away towards the strange-looking Namekian spacecraft, idly wondering if it really was to take them to the stars. He'd seen Stranger, however, so it very well may have the power they needed to get to Namek. If the boy hadn't been raised in such a weak way, he would have been ideal to send to low to mid-powered worlds to get them ready for sale. The woman, his mother, was prattling on behind him about what items were so important to the child. He rolled his eyes upon hearing her speaking. He noticed Gohan's head shamefully held down, looking towards the ground. If Kakarot wouldn't kill him later, he'd have shot the woman on the spot. It was when she finally said, "Well, at least your uncle would be more than happy to help carry all these things for you while you are on your trip." Krillin noted the look on Raditz's face. He looked like a mixture of outraged and shocked at the comment being said. Krillin wouldn't admit it out loud, but he thought that it was rather entertaining how Chi-Chi continuously bossed him around, just like she did Goku. The big difference was that Raditz was always furious about it. "I am not a boy's pack mule. How dare you attempt to fill me into such a role? I am a Saiyan warrior. Well, you can be a whatever warrior for all I care. My poor little Gohan can't be expected to carry all these things on his own. Then he shouldn't carry them at all. They are completely useless to him on this quest. That's not for you to decide. Dad, give Raditz the luggage." Raditz blinked, before staring at the Ox King in disbelief. The older man had an apologetic look on his face, mixed with fear of his own daughter as he carefully brought over the baggage. Raditz felt him placing things on his shoulders and in his hands, almost paralyzed with his own rage towards the woman. Bulma thought it looked ridiculous. Even in her space suit, she saw Raditz standing there as Gohan very quietly walked over to him, looking nervous the entire time. Raditz was so mad she could see a vein throbbing on his forehead. She doubted he could even see straight. It was so funny she started laughing at him. She'd helped him out with clothes, but that the ungrateful jerk cared much, he didn't even thank her. He was currently wearing a pair of jeans, shoes, a unbuttoned long-sleeve striped back and white shirt, which was over a undershirt he'd been wearing underneath. His chest was causing the fabric to expand, however, with every breath, given he was clearly trying to keep himself calm. Finally, after calming down for a moment, Bulma relaxed for a moment. Chi-Chi was giving Gohan yet another hug and kiss on the cheek. "Make sure he does his homework, Bulma," Chi-Chi ordered fiercely. "Of course," Bulma said with a placating expressing on her face, smiling for Chi-Chi. "I'll take good care of him, I promise." With that, everyone slowly stepped onto the platform of the Namek spacecraft. Quietly, Gohan looked up at Raditz, who was still trembling with rage as he stood there, Gohan's luggage hanging off him. "Sorry about this, Mr. Raditz," Gohan whispered. Raditz didn't respond. "Piccolo," Bulma said as the craft's platform began to rise. Outside, Oolong, Master Roshi, Chi-Chi, the Ox King, and Turtle all gave their goodbyes. Each of the explorers waved back, of course, save Raditz, who scowled at his sister-in-law with a special kind of contempt. Planet Frieza 79's outpost. The final adjustments were made to the failed engine. The entire ship seemed to thrum to life within seconds. Zarbon felt relief wash over him as he stood next to an extremely nervous engineering captain. Both nervous because either Zarbon would have killed him, or Frieza would have killed Zarbon, and then him. "Excellent work, I'll make sure you get a promotion for this," Zarbon said hurriedly, blasting off back into the ship, racing through the corridors towards the bridge. Just before entering the command center of the entire ship, Zarbon halted as he heard an unfamiliar voice. It was deeper than Frieza's. As the doors opened and he stepped inside, there was a video screen opened up for communications. Frieza stood there, his body dwarfed by the size of the screen, and the amused figure on it. Zarbon couldn't find even his thoughts for a moment as he looked at whatever this creature was on the screen. Its red eyes and purple skin were far too reminiscent of Frieza's to not be one of his own. But the question was who? Frieza looked tense, he noted, but controlled. As he joined Dodoria's side, he didn't say a word. He looked to Dodoria a second later and saw the look on his comrade's face. Dodoria looked petrified. Having been in the room longer obviously meant having access to more parts of this conversation. Well, Frieza, what is the issue? Came the purple figure's voice. The voice was straight and to the point. He didn't even refer to Frieza as Lord Frieza. Frieza was left standing there, his eyes closed as he breathed in. As I would have informed you, Cooler, the ship's engines were offline for 10 days. I can assure you that all is well and we will be on schedule soon. There was a scoff on the other as Cooler disregarded the comment entirely. Planet N772 was scheduled for conquest by you personally. It was to be completed 12 days ago, your engines have been offline for 10 days. This is unacceptable. Perhaps if you are unable to do your work, someone more fitting should take your place. Your arrogance is clearly an issue, given you now no longer think you need to pull your own weight around here. Frieza's eyes opened, turning into a glare. I have been redirected. I will attend to N772 as soon as possible, brother. Cooler knew Frieza was hiding something, he could see it in his features. He was attempting to say as little as possible. It was easy enough to tell, he'd been subtly insulting Frieza the entire time, and rather than confront him, Frieza had remained as calm as possible. If Frieza was hiding something, he'd know of it. Frieza. Cooler started. Under the authority given to me by our illustrious father, King Cold, I am now demanding full access to your ship's flight path. If N772 is not on that flight path, you will have to answer to me. Frieza took in several calculations, looking at his brother's face. What a vile rodent his eldest sibling was. They rarely spoke, which to Frieza was too often. Cooler was constantly vying for more authority, more power of his own. Cooler, however, was the lesser of the two brothers. Every time they had clashed, it had been Frieza whose name was heralded as champion. Which of course, was just one reason why he was trumpeted as the most powerful being in the universe. He came to a decision. Brother. He started. Unfortunately, when our engines went down, we lost our ability to transfer data through the main feed. It will take some time to upload our flight path to you. Cooler's face was suddenly written with a very different demeanor. Rather than arrogance and mild amusement, it was now one of disdain and anger. Then how are we having this conversation right now, you brat? He snapped furiously. You are hiding this information from me. Frieza smiled. Cooler was 6 weeks away from planet Namek, he was a mere 2. He would arrive at Namek, obtain the Dragon Balls, and have eternal life. After that, he'd show Cooler just how to behave, for the 3rd time. Cooler's features turned cold after Frieza smiled. I believe we will have to discuss this the next time we meet. Cooler said, which will be as soon as my ship catches yours. With that, the feed died. Zarbon was left speechless. No one spoke to Lord Frieza in such a way before. Let alone threatening him. If that being was coming for Frieza, it was very likely he'd come for all of his servants as well. They appeared to be brothers, and even worked together, but Zarbon had never seen this Cooler before in his life. For your sake, Zarbon, those engines had best be online. I am proud to report, Lord Frieza, that your ship is completely operational. Frieza internally sighed with relief. His eternal life would arrive soon, and then he would be the one in charge of everything. His father and brother would either admit his superiority, or die by his hand. Take us to planet Namek, immediately. The Namek spacecraft. Gohan sat across from Krillin, the two of them having their legs folded. They had quietly linked their minds and were honing techniques. Their bodies occasionally showed signs of stress and struggle. A tremble here, a facial expression there. It was like watching two people fighting one another with mild bumps and expressions. Bulma stood off to the side, holding a can of beer as she approached the two in a tank top and underwear. Are you two training again? She asked bluntly. There was no response, of course, as the two continued their psychic duel. Behind them, laying back on a Namekian chair, his hands behind his head and his feet up on a control panel, Raditz rolled his eyes. Training. They'd have breached the hull of the ship by now. They are doing nothing but meditating. Bulma blinked, turning to Raditz. He was supposed to be the strongest on this trip. She was pretty sure they were training in one another's minds, like she knew Goku could do. No, I'm pretty sure they are training, she said. Raditz just snorted in response, as if somehow answering Bulma with that. He truly hated this woman. Firstly, she was weak, very, very weak. Secondly, she was a know-it-all. Thirdly, she talked too much and was lazy. Finally, of course, was the fact she walked around in her underwear all damn day. If she weren't so repulsive in most of her other traits, he'd have tried to entertain himself by seducing her. Are you staring at me again? Bulma asked harshly. My eyes are closed. By the stars, you are a stupid creature. Raditz responded. Hey, you can't talk to me like that, came the harsh response. He'd forgotten, she knew Kakarot. Hence, it explained why she was completely out of her mind. Before the argument could go further, Krillin came out of his trance, falling forward almost breathing heavily, sweat coming down from his forehead. Wow. Gohan, good job. I didn't even see that one coming, Krillin said, having just been defeated by Krillin. Raditz's eyes opened, turning and narrowing at the two once Gohan came to as well, breathing heavily. Wow, Krillin, the boy said. If we keep training like that, we'll be ready for Vegeta for sure. A laugh came from the chair as Raditz stood up, turning towards the three of them. Gohan looked at his uncle kind of strangely. They'd not really seen him train at all so far on the flight. He didn't train like they did mentally or anything. He just kind of ate food and slept. You think a little bit of training is going to help you against Vegeta? Raditz mocked. You're out of your minds. You're weaker than Vegeta too, Raditz. Krillin reminded in response. Krillin was getting tired of the arrogant, lazy creature in the ship named Raditz, and Bulma. It was he and Gohan who were being forced to clean everything, and they were the ones who were training. Of course, I just don't delude myself into thinking training will cover the distance between our powers. Krillin was shocked by the argument he just heard. You don't really train much, do you? Gohan asked, looking at his uncle with disbelief. How'd you get so strong then? Raditz felt his eye twitch with the annoyance of the comment. I got this strong because I am a Saiyan warrior, and have seen battle for decades. He announced proudly. Goku is stronger than you, and he mostly just trained. Krillin pointed out. There was a frustrated growl from the larger man as he walked towards the three of them. Krillin, maybe you shouldn't have said that, Bulma said, her face written with fear at the look Raditz was giving them. Raditz almost looked ready to strike the two smaller combatants, before he sat down in front of them. Show me how to do this mind trick you are doing, and I will show you what a Saiyan warrior can do. Gohan, who'd looked concerned a moment ago, grinned from ear to ear. All right, training, in each other's heads. This had better be real. The Crusher. So, tell me why this is a good idea again, boss. The green-blue-haired humanoid asked, still looking nervously towards Turles. The Saiyan's armor shifted as he turned, an annoyed glance coming over his shoulder. The Crusher Corps was worried about confronting Frieza so soon. The simple truth was there was no longer a choice in the matter. Frieza was lazy as well, he'd largely have his fools Zarbon and Dodoria doing all the work. If I need to explain this to you again, days, then you'll be listening to me from the outside of the ship, Turles responded coldly. If Frieza gets the Namekian Dragon Balls, he will have eternal life. Then I could even surpass his power, and still lose to him. Turl's frustration was evident with the crew itself, especially Days. Amand and the others had kept their concerns to themselves, whereas Days had done nothing but complain and whine. Turles was reaching the end of his patience with the Days. Days still looked nervous, however. Before he swallowed, his fear of Turles trumping his immediate fear Frieza, given Frieza wasn't actually there at the moment. Maybe we could get some backup, before we go to Namek. Amand urged. What about the other Saiyans, the ones still under Frieza's employ? Turles took note of Amand's proposal. There would be significant problems with attempting to bring the other remaining Saiyans into the fold. The biggest problem of them being that Kakarot and Raditz were third-class soldiers, and nothing to be really impressed by. The next problem was that Nappa was strong, but hardly strong in the context of the situation. The only useful Saiyan to his cause was Vegeta himself, and Vegeta was now weaker than he was, and worse yet, would want the wish made by the Dragon Balls for himself. There is no time for anything other than immediate action. I will kill Frieza and then I will rule the universe. No, I don't think that would be in our interest. They will only come to heal once I've achieved eternal life. He'd only met Raditz, of all of them. The two of them had been partners before on several jobs he'd been sent on. It took nearly 10 years for his recovery, so it wasn't until he was 15 that he was brought into the World Trade Organization's fold. It also wasn't long before he realized that the organization wasn't exactly his best method of gaining prestige and power. Frieza kept a lid on everyone, and he didn't want to bother with it. When he discovered later on that Frieza had destroyed the planet Vegeta, well, that had just made him determined to kill and replace Frieza. He could still remember the day he was collected even. Planet Trog. 9 years earlier. Flying through the air like a bullet, the space pod slammed into the planet's surface moments later. Planet Trog once had a bustling civilization on it of hundreds of millions. The Trogs were a civilization of amphibious peaceful creatures, and a third-class child had been sent to this planet. Turles, ID number 7,770,221. Turles had quickly taken to his taste for destruction. He made no friends, no close ties to any of the creatures on this world save for some of the most basic wildlife in several cases. Unfortunately for Turles, his own space pod had been damaged on its arrival to the planet. All that remained was the distress emitter. Using the power of the moon on this world, Turles transformed several times. Over the course of 6 years from his arrival there, one by one the great cities of Trog were annihilated. Another year after that and the last stragglers of this aspiring civilization were finished, not one Trog was left alive on the entire planet. Turles spent nearly 7 years in isolation, before the pod came down from the sky as it had just then. He knew what it was instinctively, it was his way out. Flying as fast as he could, Turles launched himself towards the space pod. Landing in front of it just as the door opened. A large figure emerged, his long black hair and tail making itself apparent. He instinctively knew what the scouter was on the side of his head as well. When the scouter beeped several times he knew full well it was reading his power level. Power level 806. A third-class warrior if there ever was one. Turles. Raditz said, I'm here to bring you back into the fold, brother. Planet Toss. 3 years later. Being fodder was the worst job imaginable, especially to a Saiyan. Explosions blasted all around them as the Tossians defended their world desperately. They were using warriors he'd never seen before, and despite he and the other, low-class, warriors doing their best, this battle was heading to shit. The elites were flying high above, blasting rounds into this fortress of a city. Having been reintegrated into the WTO, all Turles thought was one thing as this battle went on, this battle that just exemplified his disdain for his position. He was just some third-class Saiyan warrior who was disposable. However, as far as Turles was concerned, it was everyone else who was useless. Already he'd sabotaged several of his allies in order to save himself in this meat grinder. It was when one of the elites in the skies above was finally taken down by the Tossians, their defensive fire blasting his lower body off, that Turles got an idea. The body hit the ground with a thud. Carefully Turles looked about for any attackers or witnesses before he rushed towards the corpse. Reaching down he grabbed the red optic scouter, pulling it from the body carefully before removing his own green one. He shattered his own in the palm of his hand before turning his attention to the pods in the distance. One last glance towards the elite made him focus his power, annihilating the remains of the body. Picking up the elite's remote, he dialed in which one was his. Rushing over to the landing area he found his own pod, blasting it, before stepping into the space pod of Commander Ross. Listening to the calm chatter, quietly as he lifted off just as the battle began to turn in their favor, he heard the words he wanted. Turles is missing in action, leading the low-level scum down there. Guess these Saiyans aren't as tough as they say they are. Within a few days, Commander Ross himself was declared AWOL. The Crusher, present day. And now look at me, I am a god. Turles's thoughts drifted for several moments before turning back to his crew, smirking. All of you back to your stations. It would take everything he had to overcome Frieza for those Dragon Balls. One day later, Planet Frieza 79's outpost. What this? We've got a pod coming in, it's not scheduled at all. What? Well, who the hell is it? The officers frantically went over the data as it came in. Shit, that's Vegeta's pod. Vegeta, what's he doing on his way here? Base. Prepare for the arrival of the Saiyan Vegeta. The pod slammed into the landing pad, which of course bended and folded in on the impact. Hot steam licked from the edges of the superheated craft, 3 officers going out to meet Vegeta's pod. All 3 stood there, waiting for it to crack open. Wait a second, where is Nappa? Why is he alone? And why isn't he getting out? The 3 cautiously approached the pod, finding Vegeta inside, connected to life support.